Okay. Let me hit the content warning for this one. We're going to be covering the penalty trial for the Parkland shooter. Nikolas Cruz, he's a little piece of shit. We've even seen video of him. He attacked a guard inside the jail he was being held in. He was just like talking shit to the guard, and the guard was just like leaning up against the stair. I mean, like, nobody to root for in the situation, because ACAB means that guard too. But like, Nikolas Cruz is a piece of shit. But like, the kid was just talking shit, and then just went over and just like cold cocked the guard, and he hit his head on the stairs that he was leaning up against. But this is the defense, and I think I've asked you guys in the chat several times, like, this is one of those cut and dry cases where I might be able to be convinced that the death penalty is warranted, because what redeeming quality, but as a principle, I'm all about abolishing the death penalty. I think I've come around to, like, he deserves life in prison. This trial shouldn't have even took place. This has been just a sentencing trial. He pled guilty to the charges against him. This trial, which is drug on for weeks, opened up old wounds. The judge has tried to sensationalize it, I think, for attention. It's been a mess. It should have never happened. He should have just been sentenced to life in prison. And honestly, if you are thinking of it from a punitive standpoint, I've been to jail a couple times for just a day, and it's maddening. So a life sentence is torture. This is the defense making the argument that Nikolas Cruz should be given life in prison.
What else could we learn by keeping Nikolas Cruz alive? We could use him to learn, to educate others.
Objection, not in evidence.
Sustained.
It's mitigation.
Sustained.
Mentally.
And also, I feel sorry for this defense attorney, the whole defense attorney. They're public defenders. They are underpaid. They are overworked. And my God, is this a high-pressure trial?
Individuals that are not mentally ill do not take their hemorrhoid blood and write 666 on the cell, on the wall of their cell. Think about that. He's not mentally ill. He doesn't have a neurodevelopmental disorder. A vote for death is a vote that will execute every part of his body, even the parts that he can contribute to the society. There are people that love him. Scarlett Lewis loves him. Trish Devaney loves him. Paul Gold loves him. His brother loves him. Pastor Black loves him. He means something to people.
Sustained. If there are things that were not brought forth in evidence, Ms. McNeil, you cannot talk about them.
Everyone agrees that even if you don't like those individuals that are voting for life, that you would respect their verdict. And when that person makes a decision that life is the appropriate penalty, we're done. You can ring the buzzer. This is a personal moral decision, like the decision you make when you decide to marry someone or not get married. What religion you want to practice, if you choose to practice a religion. Do I have children? Where do I send my children to school? It's that personal. So look into your heart, look into your soul, The right thing here, not the popular thing, is a life sentence. And if you have to ask yourself, how do I know if I'm making the right decision? If you follow the law, you're making the right decision. And I promise you that one day, I don't know when, but one day, I promise you, you will ask yourself, did I make the right decision? You will never regret voting for life. You can show Nikolas Cruz all the things that he did not show those 17 victims. You can show him the things that he least deserves: compassion, grace, and mercy. Grace is not a limited resource. Compassion is not a limited resource.
I thought Grace died.
Mercy is not a limited resource. Sentencing Nikolas Cruz to life is the right thing to do. So I now put in your hands his life.
There were parts of that I found effective, but overall, she didn't do a good job. But as I said, I feel really bad for her. I'm sure she is overworked, underpaid, and completely underprepared for this kind of situation. This was the prosecution's closing argument.
The defense for Parkland shooter Nikolas Cruz asked the jury to spare his life, saying he's broken. Closing arguments happened today in his penalty phase trial. However, the prosecution is asking for the death penalty. Reporter Christina Vasquez is covering the trial in South Florida.
The local news hit. I'm sorry. I thought I had the actual prosecution.
What he was doing, he was hunting his victims.
Lead prosecutor Michael Sachs.
It's a systematic massacre.
Reminding jurors of Nikolas Cruz's planning for mass murder.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018.
That was his plan. He carried it out.
And the brutal way medical examiners had testified about how they died, to include Jamie Guttenberg.
And as she runs, he shoots her and hits her in the back. It severs her spinal cord.
Gina Montalto's father shaking his head in anguish when Sachs reminded jurors of his daughter's defensive and contact wounds.
The end of that M&P 5.56 AR-15 style rifle was right up against her chest.
Telling jurors the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt his actions were cold, calculated, and premeditated, heinous, atrocious, and cruel.
It's unrelentlessly cruel. The appropriate
It's hard to argue with the prosecution.
Cruz is the death penalty.
Do we kill brain damaged, mentally ill, broken people? Do we? I hope not.
Lead defense attorney Melissa McNeil.
This phase of the trial, of the proceedings, is not about accountability.
Told jurors their client took responsibility for his actions by pleading guilty to the 17 murder counts 1 year ago this month.
The decision that has to be made by each of you individually is how he should be punished.
In her closing argument, asking the jurors to focus on what shaped the Parkland shooter.
She poisoned him in her womb.
Brain damage from an alcohol and drug addicted birth mother.
Crack addicted prostitute who sold her body to get high.
An adoptive mother, Linda Cruz.
He bought his first gun.
It feels like they just threw everything at the wall.
Literally days after being designated a vulnerably mentally ill adult by the department.
That's the problem.
Who the defense has
The
argued
lax
for
gun
the
laws that
managing
allowed
the
him
client's
to
lifetime
get his
struggles,
hands
learning delays, anxiety, aggression,
on firearms.
underpinned by fetal alcohol spectrum disorder.
You are about to make one of the most important decisions that you may ever make in your entire life. And you will have to live with your decision for the rest of your life. but sentencing Nikolas to life is the
reinforcing that they will have to live with that decision is probably the best thing she could do, but like, it's an impossible situation. It's an impossible situation to be in. Luckily for those of us who may be on the side of life in prison, as she said, it only takes one juror. It only takes one of them saying life. And it has to be unanimous for the death penalty. I'll take this time to remind all the children that may be watching this. Shoot up drugs, not schools. It's just an impossible situation. He should have never been allowed to get his hands on a firearm to begin with. There's enough murder in the world. The state doesn't need to contribute to it. I agree.